morning, everybody. I know that the Secretary and I are incredibly happy to be here with all of you. She clearly needs no introduction. I've let her know we have 12 minutes to do 3 questions. I am going to take just a very brief moment to introduce myself to those of you whom I don't know. So I was introduced. I do lead workforce development for Bank of America. I joined the bank 8 months ago and returned to the for-profit space for the first time since 1992. So I've spent my career in the higher education space, the workforce development training space, and the public sector. I share this because it was an easy decision for me to join the bank, having been president of the Community College of Rhode Island for nearly 8 years. A good number of those years, while now secretary, was then governor. I was looking for the next challenge, having watched our bank very closely for 20 years. I wanted to join the bank because I know the bank shares my fundamental belief, and that is what we all care about doing in this room, what I know the Secretary cares about doing, requires employers to be squarely at the center of the table. And I felt like at this stage of my career, I wanted to help an organization I admire do even more of it and do it even better. And so finally, what I will say as a for-profit now teammate, there's 3 reasons why our bank leans in so heavily to this work and has for many decades. The first is it's a values-led company and it's the right thing to do. That is truly what we believe, and we put our money and our people where our mouths are. The second reason, just like all of you and the companies you work for and support in your partnerships, we want the best talent out there. She's responsible for leading that for the United States. We want to outcompete our fellow financial institution partners. And then finally, we're in 97 markets across the United States, more than 35 countries around the globe. And what we all know is banks and companies thrive when there are strong economies. And in order for that to happen, you need an exceptionally well-trained workforce. So we do it because it's the right thing to do, and we do it because it's good for our business. And so with that, I'm very grateful, particularly in these exciting times, that you have joined this room for some questions. So I'll just jump in.
Yeah, great.
Your department, I think as we all know, has been significantly more involved in workforce development than it has been traditionally. You have seen that significant funding has been directed there. How do you and your team assess the changing landscape of workforce training?
Yeah, well, first of all, good morning. What Megan left out of her introduction is that she's a force of nature. And you might say, how do I know that? Because I asked her to run the community college when I was the governor. And this story is very relevant to the question. And Megan, at that time, didn't have a long academic track record. And so I've encountered a little bit of resistance initially when I put her name forward. And what I said was the community college needs to be a workforce development engine. I didn't need somebody with a storied academic career. I needed somebody who could take the community college and turn it into a place where if you were 18 and just starting out, you could go and get skills and get a job, or if you were 53 and needed to change careers or needed to upskill or were displaced, you could go to the community college and go get a job. And that's exactly what Megan did. The big thing, though, and it sounds simple, but it's true, and still so many people don't realize it, you really do have to start with the employer. You will nod your head because you know it's true, but it still doesn't happen often enough. Still, when you think job training, you think labor, you think workforce, you think of the trainer, right? Whatever it is, high school, apprenticeship, union, you don't start with the job. And so that's what we really need to do, not just say it, but do it. So anyway, when I became Commerce Secretary, it was in the thick of COVID. We had emergency funding from the ARPA dollars, and I just said, we're gonna take $500 million of Commerce's money and put it into workforce training. And it actually, many people thought, I encountered resistance in the Commerce Department initially. This isn't what Commerce does. This is the domain of the Labor Department, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, we've put it to work. We're about to train and place into jobs 10,000 people. high-wage jobs, and it's employer-focused. That's what we do at Commerce. We start with the employer, sector-based, and my hope is that this work will forever be part of what the Commerce Department does, because if you don't start with commerce, how does it make us competitive, you will not be successful.
No, thank you for that. And for any of you who know the secretary, I couldn't have been less surprised that she took the job she took in Washington and then proceeded to blow up how it had ever been done before. And it's such a, you said, it's such an obvious observation, and yet here you are sort of presenting it in a radical new way, and I know in a way that's better for our country. Before I move to the next question, you talked about CCRI, and for those of you who work in the higher education space, I would want you to know that you're looking at the now secretary, then governor, who was the first in the country to bring free community college education for all across the state. So,
amazing.
She understands that it shouldn't be an either or, that we really need to open our minds to how we think about training, and that yes, indeed, community colleges need to be central to that conversation. Last thing I'll say on that, she called me a force of nature. When I got that job in 2016, the college, still the largest in New England, was then the lowest performing. I don't think either of us really knew what we were both walking into. When I interviewed in the final stage, it's great when you don't know enough. I said, if you select me, we'll go from being the lowest performing to the highest performing in 5 years. I got in there, so to all of you who think you want to be a college president, I got in there and I thought, who allowed me to say that publicly? And we did it in 4.
Yeah,
and
we did do it. I was going to say, we did do it.
Okay, so this is a sort of thinking globally. So you're quoted as saying, for America to compete globally, we must invest domestically in our workforce, businesses, and innovation. So the question is, how you are competitive. How do we ensure that the U.S. outpaces other countries in manufacturing and clean energy technology exports? Do you have examples of how you've been able to strengthen our competitive edge through workforce development?
Yeah, I really believe this. I mean, I spend a lot of my time at the Commerce Department using our export controls to deny, for example, China our most sophisticated technology, and that's important, right? We don't want our adversaries to have technology to use against us. But at the end of the day, that's not nearly as important as investing in America. And in this regard, President Biden deserves unbelievable amount of credit, because the infrastructure package, the CHIPS Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, I think 50 years from now, we'll look back on it and see what a turning point it was in US competitiveness. If you think about, for example, the highway bill, Eisenhower's highway bill, everybody knew at the time it would help commerce, but actually it led to the creation of suburbs, led to the creation of whole new business models. The space program, in the decades after President Kennedy said we're going to put a man on the moon, this country tripled the number of engineers colleges and universities produce, quadrupled the number of chemists, and so that's what we're talking about now. So for example, one example, in the CHIPS program, we're investing $50 billion to reshore semiconductor manufacturing to the United States. Right now, in the United States of America, we produce 0 leading-edge semiconductor chips. 0, none of them. So all AI runs on these chips. Everything in your phone runs on these chips. 93% are made in Taiwan. That's a national security risk, and it's an economic. You can't be competitive if you're that dependent on one country for something so important. So we are determined to reshore, and I think we'll create about 1 million new jobs doing that. At the end of the day, if you want to outcompete China, you need to invest in research and development. Look, guys, 20 years ago, China represented a small % of global research and development. Today, it's over 20%. In that time, US has been cut in half. We've got to get back into the business of investing in our people, in our talent, in innovation, in research and development, in technology. And when we do that, no one can outcompete America.
So I'm looking at the clock. I think there is a cane if we go past, but I cannot resist. I'm going to ask you the final question, but before we do that, many of you know Rhode Island is the birthplace, really, of modern industry, modern manufacturing. Tell the story, this is personal for you, why you have such respect for the manufacturing industry and why it's so important to you to bring back to the United States.
Yeah, thank you. So those of you who don't know Rhode Island, by the way, if you've never been, you must go, must go. Great food, great everything, gotta go, great culture. But anyway, once upon a time when we were kids, everyone in Rhode Island pretty much had a manufacturing job, jewelry manufacturing. In fact, Rhode Island's often called the Rust Belt of New England because as manufacturing went to China, a lot of folks, including my dad and my family, lost their job and fell on tough economic times. And I remember so vividly, my dad, who was 56 at the time, his company, Boulevard Watch, went out of business in Rhode Island. I remember him saying, like, our leaders are leaving us behind. He didn't want a handout. He wanted to work, actually. And the story I'm telling you, I'm sure you can relate to. He was 56, he had a college degree, he had the same job for 28 years. He and all of his buddies got into the carpool in the morning and went trotted off to the factory and had a stable, secure job. And then one day, that went away, and 1,000 people, including him, were out of work, and it was really hard for us. And in his case, he kind of pieced it together, but it was he never really had a career. It was tough from then on. And that's where you guys come in. Because that story I just told has happened tens of millions of times all over America. And so what's the solution? Part of the solution is bringing manufacturing back to America. They are good jobs. We can compete. 60% of semiconductor manufacturing jobs do not require a 4-year college degree. And the average pay is $100,000. That's where you come in. They require training, but not a college degree. So we've got to focus on manufacturing. But honestly, if someone had reached out to my dad and said, how about, my dad always used to say, Massachusetts got into computers, why couldn't we? Well, he wanted to get into computers, but someone had to tell him how and teach him and take a chance on him and believe in him. And so that's where you come in, and that's what we're doing at the Commerce Department. America will outcompete if everyone has a chance. Not a handout, a chance. And a chance means good job training with wraparound services to get to the end of the training and a job at the end of the tunnel. And so the work you're doing is life-giving for Americans, but it also allows America to lead the world on the global stage. And I'll tell you this right now, the world is safer when America leads. And America can lead when our economy is strong, vibrant, dynamic, and more equal. So we got a job to do, and let's stay at it.